Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. And this time I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm reviewing a docu-fiction film called Alien Planet. Now, as you can probably guess by the name, the this is a film that is telling a fictional story, and is done in the documentary style. And this is really kind of a hard science fiction story. Hard science fiction, if you're not familiar with the term, is science fiction stories that are very heavily grounded in the real physics and science of today. I guess the best known writer in this field would be Arthur C. Clarke, the guy that did 2001: A Space Odyssey. He also wrote Childhood's End, which is actually a very, very good novel. If you ever get the chance, definitely go out and read it. It's really, really good stuff. You also have other authors probably who would be well known in this field are guys like Ben Bova, Kim Stanley Robinson, and his Mars trilogy. So this is really, as I said, science fiction taken on a very, very realistic, rooted in the real world kind of story. Like something like Star Trek is generally considered to sort of be a little bit, well, there's soft science fiction, which is just sort of like, real Buck Rogers kind of stuff. Star Wars is kind of that, or depending on just how far you want to push it, science fantasy. Star Trek has always kind of kept one foot in the real science of things, but has gone out there and done, all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, but mostly in the regards to, the crew of the various starships going to planets filled with people that look exactly like humans, or just sort of like humans with some Hollywood makeup on them. And I say this as a Star Trek fan. I love Star Trek. I've loved Star Trek ever since I was like 13 years old. But, I think we all have come to the realization that that is probably somewhat unrealistic. But at the end of the day, Star Trek is about telling stories. It is about using science fiction as a metaphor to tell stories about us, human beings, and the world in which we live. Now, hard science fiction, of course, is perfectly capable of doing that as well, but again, it sort of just leaves out the more fanciful elements. And this is what we have here with Alien Planet. It is very, very heavily rooted in our current understanding of science and what we currently believe is realistically feasible in terms of space travel. And the whole goal of this movie is to show what it would be like, according to our current modern understanding of science, if we were to land space probes on an alien planet that we knew, or that we discovered, to have living things on it. And throughout the course of this movie, well, we don't really have characters in this movie. And I know the thing that I try to do most around here is talk about characters. Storytelling and symbolism and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, I consider myself as a reviewer to be someone who focuses on characters. And we don't really exactly have that in this film. The closest thing we have are Ike and Leo, which are the nicknames of two highly advanced space probes that are basically sort of robots with an AI that is stated to be equivalent to that of a 4-year-old child. Their full names are Isaac Newton and Leonardo da Vinci. They're nicknamed Ike and Leo. And the story, as much as it goes, sort of follows these two space probes after they land on the planet and go around exploring. They split up. Now, let me be perfectly clear here. Ike and Leo are not R2-D2 and C-3PO. They're not sitting around trading wisecracks with each other, or making references to MTV or whatever you have. Again, this is all kept very grounded in the real world. And interspaced with all this are interviews with real scientists who are experts on this sort of thing. They have, just let me have a look here, Stephen Hawking. We all, probably the most famous living scientist today, and a guy who guest starred on Star Trek: The Next Generation in a very cool scene with my favorite Star Trek character of all time, Data. We have, of course, another fellow. If you've watched any videos or a lot of science fiction documentaries, you've probably seen a fellow by the name of Michio Kaku. He's a very, very well-known expert on space and all this other cool stuff. Some other guy, a guy by the name of rather interesting name of Jack Horner, who I've also seen in some documentaries on science fictiony stuff and science and space and all that other cool junk. And they even managed to get a brief comment from the man himself, George Lucas. We're not going to get into the whatevers of how people feel about George Lucas around here, but it is really undeniable that whatever you think of the guy, he has been an incredible influence on modern science fiction. So, let's leave it at that, all right? And these guys all offer, and there's some other scientists in there who just really aren't as well known, and they offer their insights and observations about how a space mission like this would go. What would go into making probes like this, how they would react to situations. And of course, they do discover life on this planet. And we get a lot of interesting comments about the various sort of creatures that are cooked up for this. Now, this is, from what I've gathered from reading the credits, this is all sort of based on a book a fellow did. I unfortunately didn't quite catch his name. That does delve into what kind of creatures we might find living on other planets. Now, again, this is, as they even say in the documentary, just based on our knowledge of life here on Earth, life is absolutely insanely diverse. So anything that they come up with the show is admittedly just speculation. There is no real way to say, well, if we were to find life on other planets, it would probably look like this. Well, no, they can't really do that. And if you have ever paid any attention to like the biological history of Earth, just the sort of animals that were running around in prehistoric times are just absolutely unfathomable at times. If you've ever seen anything about some of the crazy critters that they found alive today, living in the very deepest parts of the ocean, I mean, there's some really, really interesting things going on. And scientists, even today, are constantly discovering new species of plants and animals and all this other stuff. The diversity of life, if you really stop and think about it, is just absolutely mind-blowing. And that's just based on what we know about this one planet and the various conditions that exist here. Of course, on another planet, the conditions would be different. Now, granted, the planet they use in this documentary is supposed to be reasonably Earth-like. The main difference is that they have somewhat lighter gravity, and I'll get into that in a minute. But just because of that, they are able to really just kind of show us some very extreme possible beings. These are beings that could in theory exist. You have this critter called the Geosprinter. You have because the gravity on this planet is lighter, it makes it possible for animals or I guess I should say living beings to become much, much bigger. Much bigger than, say, any dinosaur that we ever had on Earth. So you get to see in this documentary some really incredible creatures like the Groveback and the Sea Strider. They're also able to get into what more common life forms would be. So you've got the rather what I like to personally call the evil chicken, which is this bird-like critter called a daggerist. And they even get into some of what you might find in terms of microbial life. And well, I don't want to spoil this one for you, but this documentary contains quite possibly the most badass amoeba in all of fiction. But anyway, like I said, I don't really want to spoil a lot of this for you because part of the fun of this documentary is seeing what it's like for these probes to go around this planet. You do really get this great sense of discovery. And one thing that really got me is I kept imagining myself, like, what if it was me that was on this planet? What if instead of these probes it was me? What if I was to suddenly find myself on an alien planet and just was going around exploring? And while the idea of discovering things and seeing things that no human being had ever seen before was very exhilarating, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it would also be a very terrifying experience. well, one thing that they do point out in this documentary is that there are predators on this planet. There are, just like here in on Earth, there are plants that are dangerous. And if this documentary is anything to really go by, there are some plants on this planet in the film that are incredibly dangerous. So just the idea that you could go around and not know if even the most innocuous looking thing could potentially kill you, it's a sobering thought, but it's also realistic because eventually, and this is my firm belief, human beings will go out there into space. We will land on other planets, and we will land on planets where there are living things. And that's going to be what happens. We are, even if we send out all these probes and explore, we're still going to sometimes find ourselves in conditions where we know little to nothing about the world around us, and we could find ourselves in some potentially really hairy and scary situations. I mean, think about how it must have been for explorers throughout human history who came and landed on different islands or ended up in different parts of the world so far away from everything they knew. They didn't know what foods they could eat, whether or not the water was safe to drink, what predators might be lurking. It's, again, both thoughts that are both exhilarating and terrifying. And getting back to the whole crux of it, there is basically a story with Ike and Leo, and there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. And I don't want to spoil that for you, but I do like how, even though they are inanimate objects, they're just basically robots, you do kind of come to care about what happens to Ike and Leo. I mean, it's 100% personification. It is, and that is, of course, endowing human traits on things that are not human. I mean, people act as if their cars have personality, that their computers are, well, my laptop's being stubborn today. Well, no, your laptop isn't. Your laptop is not it's not a thinking thing. It's an object. But still, we all do this. We do this with our objects. We do this with animals. Now, granted, animals have emotions and personalities and all that other stuff, but as we human beings tend to do, we tend to project more, I guess humanity is the only word that I can really think of, onto them than they actually possess. But anyway, getting into that, as I said, the documentary does make you kind of care about these Ike and Leo, even though they are only machines. And that's a testament to that. That is a testament to genuine storytelling in this documentary. Now, the designs of the aliens that we see here are really, really good. This is not, Star Trek where it's just, some guy from Ohio with a little bit of makeup on his face. This is genuinely really out there stuff that's based, again, on real understandings of science. Now, I did say that, admittedly, the scientists have said we can't really come up with a terribly realistic guess as to what something on another planet might look like. But there was one interesting comment that one of the scientists makes that I will share with you because it actually does make sense. Now, granted, again, this is all based on our knowledge of life on Earth, but the scientist points out that on our planet, herbivore creatures generally have eyes positioned in different parts of their head, kind of towards the sides of their heads. And that's simply because, as herbivores, the vast majority of their job is, besides eating and all that other fun stuff, just avoiding predators. But then he points out that predators like, say, lions and tigers and bears, oh my, and sharks, and all these other really nasty, scary critters have eyes that are kind of more towards the front. They are all about, sort of zooming in, narrowing in, having to figure out how to take down their prey. And that means that in general, carnivores, predator animals, are more intelligent than herbivores. So the scientist goes on to say that if that's the case, then it would make sense if we were to go out into the universe and discover other life forms, other intelligent life forms even, then most likely they would be descended from predator animals. Now, look at human beings. We are, in fact, omnivores, which of course means that we eat both meat and plants. We have the flat teeth for grinding, and we have the canine teeth for ripping and tearing meat off bones and all that other fun stuff. So I do like that. That is again, admittedly, speculation about alien life based entirely on what we see here on Earth, but it's one very mild speculation, and one it does genuinely make sense. So, getting back to it, the designs for the aliens are really nice. Now, of course, a lot of actually all of the stuff that we see during the story, parts of the story that are set on the alien planet, is done in CGI, and it's actually pretty good CGI. I'm not going to say that this is industrial light and magic, cameo appearance by George Lucas or not, but it's still quite good, and it's certainly up there on, let's say, the good side of CGI that we see on television. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you're not going to realize you're looking at CGI because, well, it's obvious, all right? It's not that high level. It's not something like Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, or the very good, the top level Hollywood stuff. But it's certainly not the cheap stuff that you can probably find irritating. As I said, overall it's just on the side of pretty good for television. So let's wrap this up here. Overall, is this a film that I would recommend to people? Well, if you're a person who likes science fiction, or if you just sort of like space or science in general, then yes, you would probably like this movie. If you're the sort of person that likes science fiction, but you want to see, spaceships zipping around and people, fighting and all this other cool stuff, or people, trying to work out the problem with the alien civilization, well, I'm sorry, but that's not what you're going to find here. If that's what you're looking for, then there's other movies out there for you. But again, if you're looking for a sort of a sci-fi story that's very grounded in the real world, that does offer a lot of genuinely interesting and insightful comments about modern science, and gives you an idea of what it is we really, really could be seeing in terms of space exploration in the future, then this film is definitely the way to go. I really would, for those sort of people, strongly recommend this film. And with that said, folks, I'm going to wrap this up. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And one more thing, I'd like you to let me know if you'd like me to do more reviews in this vein. I've kind of been on a bit of a documentary kick lately, and I've seen a few that I think I might be interested in talking with you guys about. So if you'd like me to, again, if you would like me to do more reviews like this, please let me know. And, oh yeah, before I go, I guess I should tell you guys where you can find this film if you so desire to see it. Well, because of the legalities of YouTube, I don't think it would be a terribly good idea for me to put up the link to it here in the video, just because you never know how YouTube is going to be about the rules enforcement. They are known to be a tad arbitrary at times. But what I can say is, if you would like to throw the words Alien Planet full documentary into YouTube, then you will almost certainly be able to find the fine film that I just watched, because I watched it here on YouTube. And anyway, folks, that'll do it for this one. Take care and have a good one.